Alright, so here's how this really went down. I was not able to find a reliable way to stop the pinion from turning. It was a little sped up, but you may have noticed in the previous video that I was trying to slip a bar in between the bolt heads of the coupling, those E18 socket heads, and it kept slipping out, and it just wasn't really working, and so I grabbed the Milwaukee and thought maybe I could just take it slow and count the number of turns doing that. And that was kind of working, but towards the end, it took the nut off all at once, real fast, and I just completely lost track of the turns. So eventually, and you'll see this later in the video, what I found is just take those bolts out of the coupling and then put them back in, or ones like it, and put a bar in between those. And that's, you can slip the bar up in between the control arm and the frame or the body or whatever, and that'll stop it from turning pretty well. And if you don't have an E18 socket, a 9/16 12 point does fit pretty well, so you can try that. So anyway, I lost track of the turns, and that's really where everything went downhill, because going back on, I have to be honest, I didn't know what remove the slop meant. Now, I eventually learned that meant fore and aft movement, basically the yoke going in and out of the housing. So for some reason, I thought it meant the rotational, like, turning the yoke back and forth. Well, there's always going to be slop doing that, so I don't know. I was in a hurry. I didn't really, I thought I researched this topic enough, but apparently I didn't. And so when I had all my marks lined up and everything was totally fine, it seemed like it was really sloppy to me, so I thought it had one more turn to go around. Again, I didn't count the turns, so I didn't know. So grab that Milwaukee, crank it all the way up, and floor that trigger. And, well, this is what happened. Or not? Dude. So yeah, I basically backed it back to my original marks, hoping that I could just leave it there, and turned out I couldn't, of course, and then jumped on the forum to find out exactly what kind of damage I had done. Okay, here's the aftermath. So as it turns out, when I got the yoke off, I discovered that I actually ruined the new seal when I put that in there. I don't really know how. It was kind of hard going on, and so I think I just kind of got frustrated and jammed it on there and ran the nut down, and it must have messed it up. So I'm going to have to be a lot more careful putting the yoke back in this time. Here's the crush collar that got smashed to be too thin now. There's the nut, and then here's the bearing. Now, apparently this bearing is supposed to be a press fit onto the pinion. And mine just came right out. So I hope that's not indicative of a deeper problem. There's no bluing or anything on the inside diameter of it, and the shaft itself seems okay, but I don't know. That's kind of weird. I mean, I guess it works out in my favor because this is going to be a lot easier to deal with this problem. But anyway, so instead of getting a new crush collar, what I've opted to do is go with the Gforce1320 solid spacer kit. And so the way it works is it's just got a solid spacer. You don't crush anything. You put this in there and the appropriate combination of shims until you arrive at the proper preload. So there's no crushing of the collar, there's none of that. The way it works is you take the original collar that comes out, measure it, and then you come up with a combination of shims that's ideally thicker than the crush collar, because you'd obviously, if you put too thin of a amount of shims in there, then it's just going to bind everything up. So you start out thicker, run the nut down to 125 foot-pounds with no seal, and then you check the rotational torque of the assembly with a beam type inch-pound torque wrench. And then, of course, ideally it's going to end up being too low of a reading, and so you take it all apart, remove 2/1000ths worth of shims, and then put it back together, try it again, and you keep creeping up on, or creeping down as it were, on the
on the shim thickness until you get the proper pinion preload. So obviously I'm going to have to add much more than what this is since I smashed it too much, but that's going to be the procedure on that. And then got a new seal and a new nut. So a quick note on what that spec should be, the rotational torque, I don't know, that's kind of up in the air for now. You know, you're really supposed to check that pinion preload with no ring gear in place. Now, I really don't want to do that. I don't want to deal with trying to take those side adjusters out and have trouble with that. I've read of guys having to torch those things out because they're just seized in there, and so I really don't want to have to do that. What I'm going to do is just remove the axles, and then I'm going to check the rotational torque of the entire assembly with the side bearings and all that all together. And so I did find a useful post on the forum where a guy suggested that 10 to 20 foot-pounds, 10 to 20 inch-pounds should be the rotational torque of old bearings, so not new. And then if you add the side adjuster bearings to that, it should add another 5 to 10. So I'm going to be looking at anywhere between 15 and 30 inch-pounds for the total assembly once I get where I think I'm supposed to be. So that's what I'm going to be shooting for. And if I can get there, I'll be pretty happy. And yeah, so alright, let's get started on this procedure. Apparently it's going to be very time consuming and tedious, but no reason not to start now. Okay, looks like 0.4, 25, 35, 6, 7, 8, 0.438, 0.439, something like that. So let's double check with the less accurate. I mean, that's pretty right on. So 0.439 is what we're after. Oh, okay, 0.408. So we need to make up 0.031 thousandths somehow. I don't think these things come in 0.01 increments, so I'm not sure how that's going to go. I've read 2 other examples of that where somebody needed it to be in between the basically an odd number of shim thickness. So here's the deal. It's supposed to come with a 10, 2 12s, a 16, and a 20. And then using those shims, you can come up with any number of combinations to come up with those totals if you need them. So let's see what we got as far as these shims. Okay, this one is a 20. So yeah, that makes sense. I've got the 110, the 2 12s, a 16, and a 20. Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to round that up just to be safe and call that 440. Minus that should be 32. Which should be a 20 and a 12. Only problem is I want to go even thicker than that. The 16 and the 20. Okay. So with the spacer, the 20 and the 16, it looks like I'm at 0.445. Is that what that says? Because if I back this out to the 0, that's 0.450, and then when I tighten this down to the 20, that's 0.445, which is basically 6 thousandths bigger than that. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to start with. The spacer, the 20, and the 16. And we'll go from there. Okay, so spacer and the 2 shims. And then of course the bearing going in like that. Okay. Alrighty, now this thing. Alright, we've still got quite a bit of fore and aft to play. There's the mark on the pinion, and there's the one on the nut, so... Okay, so now we're lined back up. I think we've still got some play, so... I'm going to be using that mark on the original nut to tell if I've gone too far or not. Okay, it feels like it's stopped. Well, looks like we're past our marks. I don't feel any slop forward and back, but our mark is past the original spot. So I think we need more shims. So that's exactly why I wanted to keep an eye on this original nut mark, because I might have just tightened this thing down to 125 pounds without even knowing that I had already... Boy, I must have crushed that thing significantly. So let's take it back off, add some more shim material. Just very carefully, not prying hard. I got lucky and mine's not on there very tight for whatever reason, so alright, I'm hoping that this is really overshooting it, so I'm going to go up to 40, which is 2 12s and a 16. So adding that much, it looks like we're lined up to our original spot. Boy, I'd be inclined to just torque this thing down and send it, but I'm not. Alright, at this point I'm going to go ahead and I've already gone past it a little bit, so I'm going to torque it down right there to 125. How far past are we? Boy, we're pretty far past. I don't know if I like that. It seems to turn easily, but we are definitely past our original marks. No fore and aft play. So, alright, I'm going to go ahead and remove the axles and then measure the rotational torque of this thing.